Namaskaram, Jai Shri Ram, Jai Jai Shri Ram. I know this is the session after lunch, so everybody's in a nice, happy siesta phase. But hopefully, we will talk of something very exciting. What do you prefer, English, Hindi mix? Huh? English? Sorry, okay. So, I don't have a book on my topic. I'm going to talk on Hindu revivalism, Hindu resurgence in Indonesia. But that is not what my books are on. I typically talk about Mahabharata, Ramayana. I have 3 books, 2 on Mahabharata, 1 on Ramayana. But today's topic is different because I thought maybe for the audience that we have here, all of you are associated with temples, all of you are astikas, all of you are dharmiks. And we face lots of problems, sometimes dealing with the administration, sometimes dealing with people and whatnot. But in all this, there is a very fascinating story or a case study from Indonesia that I thought I'd share with all of you. But how is it that I happen to talk about Indonesia? It so happens that when I used to live and work abroad, I did a short stint in Indonesia. So from Hong Kong, I had to go to Indonesia and my tickets got booked, everything was ready, and I go to the airport, not knowing exactly what flight I was booked on. My secretary had done the booking. So I go there and I see, that's when it hit me for the first time. Do you know what is the name of the airlines of Indonesia? Anybody? Garuda. And I'm thinking, oh, interesting, Garuda Airlines, great, fine. Theek hai, chalo, we all know there is some connection of Hindu Dharma in Indonesia. So then I land in Indonesia and I move out, I'm in my vehicle, and there are these big boards. These big boards are saying, Dirghayu Indonesia. What is Dirghayu? Long life. So basically they were saying, live long Indonesia. Why? Because I think it was their 60th independence year or something like that. So they were celebrating. And everywhere, we don't even see that in India. But there you had Dirghayu Indonesia. And I'm like, wow, this is getting really interesting. Then I go ahead and I see words like Sadan, Graha, Rupaya. You already know it comes from Rupakani and stuff. So lots of these connections of Sanskrit in the language of Indonesia. Of course, then it struck me that Bahasa is what? Bahasa is the language of Indonesia. But what is Bahasa? Do you know the main word where Bahasa is coming from? Bhasha. So Bhasha becomes Bahasa. I'm like, okay, this is very interesting. And then over the course of my stay there, I realized that Indonesia was so much more Hindu than what we can even imagine. I went to the History Museum of Indonesia, and you'll be surprised. Everything in the History Museum is Hindu. Every single artifact. You have Bhairava, you have Mahishasura Mardini, you have various kinds of Ganesh Murti over there. You have a Kala Bhairava Murti, you have a Agastya Rishi Murti. The entire museum of Indonesia is all Hindu. And I'm like, wow, this is absolutely fascinating. Then somebody told me, I was staying in Jakarta. By the way, then I figured out the name of Jakarta is also Jayakarta. When one of the kings won over, now the story is that it was a Muslim king who won over, but he changed the name and he made it Jayakarta. So that is how it became Jakarta. Anyhow, so then somebody said, in Jakarta, there is a Hindu temple, you should go. So I'm hoping it's going to be a Hindu temple like any other place. So I go to that temple. Can I have the slides? And I'm going to show you what I found. I see this temple. Now, does it really remind you of any temple of ours? Not really, right? We don't have temples like this. It's called Pura Adityaraya. Pura means a temple. Aditya we all know, right? So it is called Pura Adityaraya. This is a Hindu temple where I met lots of very local Indonesian Hindus of Jakarta. But this was the temple. Now, after I went here, I was very fascinated. Now, like when I went to these museums, you see every kind of artifact, all murtis like ours. But the temple is so different. What happened? That's when my journey into the history of Indonesia started. I will not go into that detail right now, but Indonesia was Hindu until 12th century. Remember this. Probably from like 180 to, so almost 1300, 1400, 1500 years, or maybe even before, Indonesia was predominantly Hindu and Buddhist. In just about 200 years, it converted wholesale, lock, stock and barrel. Wholesale. Every single province became a Muslim province, just in about 200 to 300 years. Hindus, Buddhists, which made about 90% plus, including the animist religions over there, were now reduced to a handful of percentage. And after that, the Dutch came. So after the Dutch came, Christianity came. So whatever was remaining, a lot of them got converted to Christianity. Of course, then independence happened for them. And then the Indonesian local government, which always spoke about how all religions are equal and all religions should have a place, that government, that was the plank on which the independence war was also fought. They came to power. And they designed what is called Panchashila. Panchashila as the founding principles of Indonesia. In that, one Shila, so one principle was, there is only one and one God. Okay, there is only one and one God. Now, what did it mean in practice? In practice, it meant that only those belief systems which have one God, one way of worship, one book are allowed to be religions. No other belief system can be a religion, and you cannot be a person without religion. So now see what happened. You had options. You had Protestant, you had Catholic, you had Islam, but you had no Hindu. You had no animist religions because we were considered polytheists. Even in Indonesia, all kinds of gods they worship. Like we have different sampradayas, Shaiv, Vaishnav, they had all of those. Shaktas, you name it. Everything that we had, they had a similar system over there. So Hinduism did not even find a place as a religion, and people were forced to pick a religion. Some people gave in and got converted. They picked Christianity, Islam, whatever. Some people held on to what was their ancient faith, including some of the animist religions. That's when the Hindus of Indonesia, who were now largely in Bali, as we know, Bali, the island in Indonesia, is almost 90% Hindu even today. That's because when the Islamization started, a lot of Hindus moved to Bali. So now, Hindus had an existential problem. I'm talking about the 1950s. Yeah? I'm talking about the 1950s. Hindus had an existential problem. Kare to kya kare? Either you convert or somehow you get together and convince the government that we fall into what you are calling a religion. That is when all the Hindus of Indonesia came together. They sat down and they said, come what may, we will not leave our Shraddha. We will not leave our gods. But we will have to come together and we will have to align on a few principles. So they came together, and in that you must know that there were two prominent Indians who played a part. One was Pandit Narayan Deva Shastri and the other was Raghuveera. Pandit Narayan Deva Shastri, he actually he was from Lahore. And after independence, Indian independence, he moved to Indonesia, married a Balinese woman and settled there. Raghuveera ji was very much Indian. These two people got involved. They got all the major Hindu swamis, pandits and everybody together, and they laid down what is called the Pancha Shraddha. So they said all Hindus have the right to worship however and whatever they want. That is the beauty of Hindu Dharma, right? We believe in diverse ways. We say ekam sat bahuda vadanti vipra, bahuda vipra vadanti. That has been our principle. But now they had to come together and they agreed on the 5 principles. One is there is only one God. Now interestingly, you know what is God called in Bahasa? He's called Maha-Isha. Even today, the God is called Maha-Isha. But interestingly, the Maha-Isha principle was denying Mahesha only completely. So now, the Vaishnavas, the Shaivas, all kinds, they came together and they said, okay, we'll agree. We'll agree on there is one God. We will not throw away our murtis. We will worship our murtis, but yes, in principle, agreed there is one God. Second, all Hindus, we agree in what is called Atma. And we believe every creature has an Atma. Third, we believe in the Karma Phala Siddhanta. Now, why are they doing all this? To replicate the 10 commandments, yeah, like Christianity has. So what are the principles, the universal principles for all Hindus? Third, Karma Phala, as I said. Fourth, Punarbhava. Punarbhava is reincarnation. We believe in reincarnation. And fifth is Moksha. So they said, for Hindus across Indonesia, these 5 will be prime. And we have one God, we have one way of worship. And we have one text. Now there they got some leeway and they said Vedas, Bhagavad Gita and 2 old Indonesian texts. They agreed that this is our main canon. But now how to do this one God thing is the question. Will the Shivas agree? Will the Shaivas agree? No, only one God. They'll say Shiva is the main God. Vaishnavas will say no, not Shiva. Vishnu has to be the main God. How did they solve it? They said, let's go back to the concept of Achintya. Like we have Brahman, the Vedas talk about Brahman, right? This Brahman is Nirakara Nirgun. That is how they conceptualized Achintya. It was there. One of their own Swamis had thought of this. He was a Shaiva Swami. And he had already instituted some of this Achintya in the form of Shiva. They brought it and they said, this is our Bhagwan. And this Achintya, because you cannot think of it, it is Nirakara Nirguna. It has no form. But what does it represent? The trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. So they said, okay, this is the Bhagwan, this is Achintya. Now Achintya cannot have a murti like anybody else because it is Nirakar Nirgun. But then what do you worship? So they said, we will worship what is the Syang Hang Vidhi in the name of a pillar. Now here you see there is a pillar. Do you see the pillar here? And there on the top, if you can see a small image of a man. This pillar you will find in every recent Hindu temple of Indonesia. This is what they consider the main deity. But that doesn't mean you don't have any other deity. Every temple will have a Saraswati Murti. Every temple will have a Ganesha Murti. Every temple you will find a Shiva, Vishnu, everything. But this is main. And that thing over there is considered Achintya. This is how they solved one problem of how to homogenize or bring together the Indic wisdom in a way that aligned with what their masters said is the only way a religion can be determined. The other thing they did was also very interesting. Now I'll show you something else. So when I was visiting this first temple, Pura Aditya Raya, I saw something very interesting. Lots of young people had come there. Men, women, everybody. They were all dressed in their very traditional costume. All of them, every single one of them. And they came, they sat down. The boys sat in Padmasana, the girls sat in Vajrasana. 5 minutes, they followed exactly the same procedure. Same hand mudras, same kind of prarthana. And eventually the Pandit over there, the Pujari over there, he chidkod, like we do Achman, something like that. He threw water on the heads of the people. So I asked one of the boys there, I said, what prarthana do you say? What do you pray? And how is it that all of you say the same thing? Because if we all go to temple, we all worship in very different ways. North, south, east, west, in north, different ways. Everything is different. So how is that all of you are looking same, wearing similar clothes? What is it? So they came up, again, this happened at that time. They came up with what they call Puja Tri Sandhya. We all know Sandhya Vandan, right? But in India, in Sandhya Vandan, there are lots of rules. Who can do Sandhya Vandan? Only men can do. We have only Upanayan, those who have done, they can do Sandhya. There are various kinds of rules. Here they said nothing doing. We need to have a same kind of puja padhati. By the way, I must tell you, it is not as if there are no castes in Hindus in Indonesia. There are very clear caste distinctions. Different castes and communities have their own temples, they have their own puja padhati, everything. But one thing is common. So they have some common and some different. This is the common. The puja Tri Sandhya. So Tri Sandhya, they do it 3 times a day. Every household you will see it. They will be offering naivedya, doing puja in a certain way. Every school in Bali will play the Tri Sandhya loudly from the mics. Not just in Bali, in every other temple, every Hindu temple, whichever you have, you will see all of that. So the children, they know that if we are Hindu, these are the few things we do. Everything else can be different. And what is this Tri Sandhya? I'll take 2 more minutes, yeah? What is the Tri Sandhya? You have to see the prarthana. Sounds familiar? Look at these. It starts with the Gayatri mantra. Then it is about Om Narayanam Idam Sarvam. Then Om Tvam Shiva Tvam Mahadeva. Then it has Om Papoham Papakaramham. So then they have the 2 Kshama mantras. And then it ends with Kshantavya Kaiko Dosha. So all dosha, shanti. That's what they are doing. So this is the Tri Sandhya that they came up with. Now what else did they do? If you go to Bali, the whole temple tourism is taken to the next level. If you ever go to Bali, definitely go to the beaches and everything. But go to the temples, not just in Bali, go to Java, go to the temples, go to Malang, go to the temples. Malang and Java actually have very ancient temples also, where in the last 2-3 years, puja has been restarted. In the Prambanan temple in Java, no puja happened for I don't know how many years. But once again, the Hindus of Bali, of Indonesia, have restarted temple worship in those temples. Second, while they have promoted temple tourism, lots of Videshis, Firangs, everyone comes. What they do not give up on is their Shraddha. If you are not dressed in a certain way, you cannot enter certain sanctums. Full stop. Every festival, you have to dress in a certain way, follow certain rules and regulations. Common temples, common for everybody. Community temples, based on their community. Third thing that they did is the art. So they have a lot of performances of Ramayana and Mahabharata in different ways. They will do those performances in every other temple. And it is so beautifully done. They are charged well, nothing comes free. You pay for it, you go for it, but you will get a whole pamphlet explaining what kind of performance it is, what is the story behind it, why is it performed, what is the kind of artists that participate. Everything is explained for the people who are visiting. So I'll just show you one more picture of that and I'll end my talk. This is a performance in one of the temples, Uluwatu temple in Bali. But you also have such performances in Prambanan. And they charge well for it. People come, people participate, people enjoy, and people go back having a very immersive experience. Now, because I don't have too much time, so I will not sit and give any gyan here. I think all of you have much more experience in managing temples. But I will say a few things. We all face different kinds of problems, especially in states like Tamil Nadu, when the whole administration is against us. We cannot afford to remain divided. Not in Tamil Nadu, not anywhere else. We will have to come together. We will have to align on certain universal principles while following what we are doing. Of course, we are not facing any existential crisis. And third, how do we ensure that our current generation stays as connected as the Bali Hindus are? You know what to do. Thank you so much. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Krishna.